They've got 18 different types of ballistic missiles, both old and very modern. They just tested an intercontinental ballistic missile, reportedly successfully tested it. They've got 5 different types of cruise missiles. They've got in excess of 15 types of drones. So Iran has been preparing over the last, they finally came to the realization as a result of the events of the last 46 years, since the arrival of the Ayatollah Khomeini and the establishment of the Islamic Republic back in, February February 1979, that they're at war with the United States. The United States has repeatedly attacked Iran, not the other way around. The United States is very fond of creating this narrative that it's, here we are, we're just minding our own business, looking around, and these nasty Iranians come up and attack us out of the blue. And, they cite, look, what Iran was behind the bombing of the Marines, we call it the Marine Barracks in Beirut, Lebanon in October 1983. Well, what happened in September of 1983? Oh, yeah, that'd be right. U.S. battleships, when we still had those deployed, were shelling Shia neighborhoods and villages in the Baikal Valley, killing Shia women and children. So, when we kill a bunch of civilians and then their relatives or the friends retaliate, we act surprised. From the early outset in 1980, even before Hezbollah existed, the United States is encouraging Saddam Hussein to invade Iran, and we then supply Saddam Hussein with precursor chemicals used to produce mustard gas, which, when all is said and done, when that war was over, at least 500,000 Iranians were dead as a consequence of that war. If you go back to October of 2024, when they launched a demonstration attack, they were wanting to show Israel what they could do with drones and missiles, hoping that would persuade the Israelis to back off. It had the opposite effect. They just assumed, Iran's weak. They took Iranian patience for weakness. And the same happened in June, the 12-day war. It continued to lie to the public about they claimed that Iran really inflicted no damage at all on Israel, when the exact opposite was the case. So now Iran's come to the place that they have drawn a line in the sand. They have been a victim again of an act of war by the West, admitted act of war by Scott Bessent, that we attacked your economy to inflict maximum economic damage on you and your people. And happy about it. Look at what we did. So now Iran is going to be fully justified, and they're prepared to defend themselves.
Is there a plan out there that you think that could take down the IRGC and the Ayatollah and not result in chaos on the streets?
There is no doubt in my mind that there's an absolute plan that we can execute to take down the civilian and military leadership of Iran, the entire IRGC infrastructure that sustains them, their defense industrial base that helps sustain them, the leaders of the militias and the infrastructure that's out there repressing the people, take down dramatically their entire rocket and ballistic missile program, and do it comprehensively that would deny them to have holistic retaliation attacks on the United States bases or on Israel.
Let's dive straight into one of the most dangerous and misunderstood relationships in the world today, the United States and Iran. On the surface, we see diplomats shaking hands, holding talks, and speaking the language of peace. But behind closed doors, a very different story is unfolding. One filled with secret warnings, shocking admissions, and loud voices calling for total war. How can two rivals be talking about negotiation while at the same time preparing for conflict? Even the U.S. admits it helped the recent protests in Iran. When you peel back the layers, what emerges is a risky strategy and a deep gap between what the public is told and what is really happening. It all begins with a small moment of hope as US and Iranian officials quietly met in Oman for their first direct talks in months, a rare pause after years of tension. For a brief moment, it feels like both sides might be stepping back from the edge. From Tehran, the message is careful and cautious optimism. The story seems to start with a little glimmer of hope, right? You've got US and Iranian officials sitting down in Oman for direct negotiations, the first time they've done that in months. After all the tension, this looked like maybe, just maybe, a step back from the edge. Iranian foreign minister said that it was a good start. The dialogue has begun. But he also pointed out the elephant in the room. The main challenge is the lack of trust. Given the history, you can see why. But as the diplomats were getting ready to talk, the US issues a warning. And the tone from the American side was dramatically different. This wasn't about building trust. This was about making a very, very clear threat.
Diplomacy moving forward. The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal, aside from diplomacy, as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world.
This isn't a negotiation between equals. It's an ultimatum. It's talk or else. So where is all this hardline talk coming from? Well, it's being fueled by a very specific story, a narrative about the recent unrest that's been happening inside Iran. It tells a completely different story. And you have to understand this piece to see the whole picture. Donald Trump posted a message on Truth Social saying Iranian patriots keep protesting. Help is on its way. So the picture being painted for us is of a totally organic, homegrown uprising, and America is just cheering on these brave patriots from the sidelines. But here's the big question. What really sparked those protests? Was it just a spontaneous thing? Well, a recent pretty jaw-dropping admission in a Senate testimony.
And what we have done is created a dollar shortage in the country. At a speech at the Economic Club of New York in March, I outlined the strategy. It came to a swift and, I would say, grand culmination in December, when one of the largest banks in Iran went under. There was a run on the bank. The central bank had to print money. The Iranian currency went into free fall. Inflation exploded. And hence, we have seen the Iranian people out on the street. We will continue monitoring all the partners, all the Iranian partners.
What he actually says is that we created a dollar shortage, the Iranian currency went into free fall, inflation exploded, and hence we have seen the Iranian people out on the street. Wow. So the protests weren't just supported by the US, they were the direct intended result of an economic attack. The goal was literally to crash the economy to get people onto the streets. And make no mistake, this wasn't some accident. The testimony called it a long-planned operation, and the timeline really lays it all out. You see a meeting between Trump and Netanyahu in late December. Then the US strategy hits its peak and a major Iranian bank fails. What happens next? January 2026. Widespread protests erupt all across Iran. And right on cue on January 13th, Trump posts help is on its way. It's a clear, coordinated sequence of events. This just perfectly shows the massive gap between the public story and the reality on the ground. The public rhetoric is all we're supporting brave Iranian protesters, but the admitted reality, we're intentionally crashing their economy to make people rise up. Two very different stories. To many officials in Trump administration, the U.S.-sparked protests is a great opportunity to be seized.
I don't agree with the overture in these negotiations. And the reason is I don't think we should do anything that extends the life of this regime. And negotiated settlement, even on terms favorable to us, would grant them sanction relief. And it does what? It recovers the regime. That means we're going to deal with these guys, what, another 10 years or so? And all the suffering that they've caused? We have an historic opportunity here, combined with Israel and the United States, to finish these guys once and for all. And I think that is the much preferred option. I believe the president will eventually come to that decision if he's not already there. In his own mind, he just wants to see what's going to happen with these negotiations.
Well, let's put it in perspective. When the U.S. invaded Iraq back in 2003, they used a force of about 300,000 ground troops. Now look at the situation today for this much bigger, more ambitious plan for Iran. The number of ground troops available for an invasion? Zero. None. And it gets even more concerning. Military analysts estimate that U.S. forces in the region can only sustain a high-intensity all-out war for a maximum of about 10 days. 10 days after that, they start running dangerously low on critical munitions. The missiles and bombs you need to fight a war. Iranians already know this. We're talking about a country that's 3 to 4 times bigger than Iraq. And they've had years, decades even, to prepare for exactly this kind of attack. They have already spread out their forces, hidden their assets, and their whole plan is likely just to ride out that initial 10-day storm and then hit back. If all this confidence about a quick, easy victory sounds a little familiar, it's because, well, we've heard this song before. Remember this quote. The outcome is clear.